So we've got a great webinar today. For those of you who participated in our Teacher Training Plus project last year, was the first year. We focused on kind of the big three: basic literacy, English language learning, um, HSE. And so this year we've been able to expand into new areas, and one of them is workplace literacy. So as I was going through and looking at the attendees that were introducing themselves, I realized I didn't recognize hardly any of those names. So that's a great sign. New topic and new people being brought into this project. So Michelle's got a great workshop for us, and I'm going to just real quickly go through some logistics and then turn things over to her because she's the person you came to listen to. Michelle, if you'll go to our next slide. Great. So we're going to ask that you use the chat feature to introduce yourselves, which you've done. Share links and resources with the group. It's also a place where Danielle is going to be posting links and resources that come up during the webinar. And if you want to ask questions of the group, you can do that. If you have questions for Michelle, we're going to ask that instead of putting those in the chat, you put those into the Q&A by just clicking on that Q&A icon on the bottom bar of your screen. The reason we ask you to do that is because that allows us to track your questions, make sure they get answered, and also Michelle has agreed if we are getting to the top of the hour and people still have questions that they haven't answered, she's agreed to stick around and answer them so we can make sure everything gets answered and caught on the recording. So please use that Q&A function for asking questions to Michelle. Next slide. So we are recording. This is one of the questions that often comes up. You're going to get a follow-up email probably within a day or two. It's going to have a link to the webinar recording. Michelle's going to be sharing her slideshow if you want to use that with your colleagues back at your literacy program. We're also going to have a summary sheet of the key points that Michelle's talking about today. We'll send you a transcript of the chats, the Q&A. You'll also get a certificate for attending. We're also going to send you some additional information about scholarships and individual membership information. So what those things are real quick, the scholarships are for you to be able to order materials from New Readers Press as we go through this webinar or other webinars. You may hear products discussed. Some of them may be from New Readers Press, some of them may be from other publishers, but as you're kind of learning about new teaching strategies and you think there's a set of materials that we publish that you would like to try out, you can apply for a scholarship. It's $1,000, which winds up being about $900 or so for books, and the rest covers the shipping and handling. And it's just a way for you to order and test out some materials that you think you might like to try. The individual membership, we'll send you a link to apply for a free individual membership, and what that does is it allows you to get access to members-only benefits that are on Education Network, our resource hub. And one of the big ones of those are access to the basic literacy and ESL tutor training, which is free to all Pro Literacy members, but there's a fee associated with it for non-members. There's also some great resources like our Notebook archives, which Notebook is our instructional publication for tutors and teachers, comes out 3 times a year, and I know there are great articles in the archives about workplace literacy, so you may want to go in there and check those out. You'll see that on the slide there are registration links for coaching sessions. These are going to be included with the slides. They'll come out in a separate email, and Michelle, if you'll advance, we can talk about what those coaching sessions are. So oftentimes we attend webinars. The person presenting the webinar gives us lots of great ideas. We go back, we try to implement those strategies in our program, and we get stuck. We either can't remember exactly what they said, the situation they described isn't exactly like ours, or we start to implement it and come across a barrier or a problem that they didn't talk about. The small group coaching sessions are meant to help address those types of things. So what they are is an opportunity about 2 or 4 weeks after the webinar. You can sign up for a small group coaching session with Michele. They're limited to up to 12 participants per coaching session. And you go in, and let's say there's me, Lauren, and Danielle, and Michele. I start off and I say, you know what, Michele, you talked about goal setting with in a workplace literacy context. I started doing that with my students, and we just kind of went down a rabbit hole. Here's what happened. I don't know how to go back and correct those goals. Michele's going to give me great advice. She might recommend a few resources. I might even get advice from Danielle or Lauren, who's also attending. And then it goes on to Lauren. She talks about the issues that she has coming up. I get a chance to listen. I get a chance to give her some recommendations, and I also get to hear what Michele has to say. So it's just a little bit more intimate, kind of targeted mentoring opportunity. Really encourage you guys to sign up for those and make use of those. Next slide. And we talked about the scholarships and the memberships. So here's some additional information. I think I saw Danielle already posting those links to the chat. So the scholarships are just to for you to get an opportunity to get some materials that you haven't tried out before. There's some examples of the types of offerings that we have for those. They are limited. We've got a pot of money, $60,000, so we can give away 60 scholarships. Once we've given away 60 scholarships, that's it. So if you are interested in getting some materials, get that application in quickly. And then the membership information is really pretty straightforward. You just click on that link, fill out the form, and we'll send you all your membership information. Michele, I think that's it for me. If you want to, yep, I will turn things over to you, let you introduce yourself, and you guys enjoy what Michele has to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you today. My name is Michele Vick, and I am an instructional consultant at Texas A&M. I work with international graduate students who need spoken language support as they begin to work as teaching assistants here at the university. But prior to that, I worked in the State Professional Development Office for Adult Education and Literacy for the state of Texas. And I was working with initiatives related to digital literacy, remote instruction, distance learning, and ed tech integration. And then prior to that, I had 15 plus years teaching ESL almost exclusively to adults here in Texas and also around the Middle East and North Africa, and also training teachers who are teaching ESL to adults. And recently, over the last few years, I've developed a course for a program, an adult education program here in Texas, that is a customized course to help skilled professionals or internationally trained professionals. So these are people who come from outside of the US but have some sort of certification or degree already. And the course helps them look at how do they integrate into the American workforce, anything from resumes and cover letters and job search and interviews, but also things like credential evaluation and how they get to use the credentials they've already earned here in Texas. All right, let's take a look at our objectives for today. The goal is that you will be able to identify key strategies for assisting adult learners in uncovering and articulating their own personality traits and their career interests. So this can be learning about themselves and then learning how do they articulate that to others. And then we're going to integrate some web-based tools and look at how we could use those with learners, like an online career exploration platform, how to integrate that into instructional plans. And this can be used to build your learners' digital skills and to enhance engagement and deepen learning, as well as help them figure out what they want to do for a career and what it takes to get there. And we'll look at how we can guide students in creating some practical projects, such as slide presentations that showcase their findings. So when we can give them tools to learn how to showcase their interests, those tools will carry over later into their careers. And speaking that, as we go through the activities today, I really want you to listen and consider how the activities that we do integrate or help build not only workforce literacy, but also perhaps basic literacy skills, information literacy, digital literacy, possibly numeracy skills, because the goal is that the things that we're doing are integrated and we're touching on multiple angles with the students. So let's take a look at the agenda that we're going to follow today. First, we're going to take a brief look at the research and what research tells us about the value or benefit of doing career exploration with students. We're going to look at how we might need to address vocabulary. We're going to discover some strategies and tools that help learners explore the following. This is kind of the framework I'm thinking. Who am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there? And I got that framework from a document from SABES, which is the professional development tool for program for adult education in Massachusetts. And I believe there's a link to that on the references page at the end. Then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A and wrap up. And a few things I want to say before we dive in is that the tools we're going to look at today, all of them are free. And I think that's really important for you to know, like none of them require any kind of fee. What they do require is an email. And this is a good opportunity for you to make sure that your students have email accounts and know how to use them. I always require that at the beginning of my courses with students. It's one of the week one activities we do. So one of the things I want you to be thinking about is how can you help your students create emails and passwords in some sort of standardized ways that helps you to kind of remember when they forget their email or their password, and helps them remember as well. And you might even think about teaching them some password storage techniques or giving them information about tools to securely store passwords. Because I know for me, my students often create email accounts and then forget how to access them. The other thing I want to point out as we go through today is that these activities, you're going to see that they're leveled. I've created some different activities for different levels of students. And at each stage of the discovery, who am I, where am I going, how do I get there, it is going to get progressively more difficult. But I have used all of these activities with ESL students, and I've used them with students who are at NRS level 4, which is low intermediate or higher. And I've used them successfully, even with students who are just barely low intermediate ESL students. With support, I think all of these activities could be done with beginning basic ABE students as well. I also want to point out that I have taught all of these activities via Zoom, so they can be done in a remote setting and also in the physical classroom. And I've also created short videos demonstrating how to use the tools and how to complete the assignments and then assign them on Google Classroom as independent work as well. So all of these activities can be done synchronously or asynchronously, and they can be done in the physical classroom or on Zoom or any other tool you might be using. Okay, so Danielle is going to launch a poll for me, and I just want us to think about our students' starting points as we get going. So the questions in the poll are written here. You can see them and answer them here if you would prefer, or you should see a poll showing up on your screen. There are 4 questions, so you'll need to scroll to see all the questions. But I'd love to hear your answers to these questions. And I'm just going to read them out loud while people are answering them. So question 1 is, what percentage of your students understand the difference between a job and a career? And you might even think, do you know how to adequately explain that? What percentage of your students are knowledgeable about career pathways available to them? And do they know the skills and qualifications required for their desired careers? And do they know where to find accurate and up-to-date information? And these are all questions that I hope would be answered by using the activities that I'm going to take us through today. All right, so I see answers coming in, and it looks like already 23 of you have completed the poll, which is great. Love seeing people actively doing this. And again, if you are struggling with the poll on the Zoom screen, you can also open the chat box and write your answers there. All right, so it looks like, as I am looking at the results, and we'll just wait one more minute and then I'll have Danielle in the poll. As I'm looking at the results, it looks like it is 25% or less would say that that their students do know the answer, or do know the difference between a job and a career, and more than 50% would say no, they don't know the difference. I'm going to wait just a moment and then have Danielle share the results. All right, Danielle, will you go ahead and click on end and then share for us? All right, so yes, I wasn't remembering what the answer choices were. So over 50% of you said that 25% or less of your students know the difference between a job or a career. And then very few of you, like 3% of you, said that more than 75% of your students would know the difference between a job and a career. So it looks like we've got some work to do on helping our students know what those differences are. And those differences lead to longer term job stability too. So it looks like very few students also know about career pathways available to them. In the question number 3, do we know the skills or qualifications required for their desired careers? 52% say maybe and 30% no. And then where to find accurate and up-to-date information? Yeah, still like there's a lot of no's and maybes. So we've got some work to do to make sure our students really are ready to pursue careers and do the work to learn about them and know what's a good fit for them. So we're going to look really quickly at what the research tells us. I will just say right off the bat, there is not a lot of research that looks directly at doing career assessments or inventories with adult learners that are in like GED or ESL programs. But what I did look at a white paper, and I just want full disclosure, this white paper was funded by a program that pays for or that owns a career assessment tool. So it's to their benefit to look at positive results. But within that white paper, there were a lot of studies listed that looked at the fact that when students are involved using career exploration tools, they are more motivated for the job search, and then they have a higher degree of job satisfaction and success in their job once they find a job. Hopefully that's because the job is a better fit for them because they use career exploration tools in the first place. And then when students make informed decisions about jobs, then this will usually lead to greater stability. And I mentioned like there's greater stability in a career versus a job because you've entered something that's a good fit for you and has opportunities for upward mobility. And this can lead to economic benefits, greater job stability when people stay in jobs for a longer amount of time. There's economic benefits for them as individuals and their families, and this also impacts their communities. All right, we're going to now look at what are some classroom strategies that we can do to promote career exploration and informed decisions so that students really know who they are, where they're going, how to get there. And the first is vocabulary. So I want you to think about what is the vocabulary that students would need to know in order to engage in career exploration. And even the word career itself, that would be a vocabulary word that students might need to know. And we're thinking like in general terms, so not about a specific career, but as they're looking at websites that talk about different careers and skills and qualifications and things like that, what's some vocabulary they need to know? Danielle's going to put a link in the chat box. And this leads to a Slido that you can use to put your answers, but you're also, if you want to just open the chat box and write your answers in the Zoom chat box, you can do that as well. And I am going to go to the Slido so that we can see it. All right, so we've got a few things coming on. We've got resume. That is definitely a word. Ooh, expectations, it's great. I love seeing these populate, that's great. And just while this is populating, I want to point out that Slido as a tool, up at the top, I can see that there are 5 people typing. And this is really great as a teacher. If I'm using Slido and I'm not sure if my students have finished typing in whatever their answers are, I can look up there and kind of maybe wait until the number of people typing has gone down. All right, we've got a lot of words coming. Experience and resume. I see also in the Zoom chat box, I see you, Lindsay Highland. Experience, good. Goals, you're right. Reference, that's one that your reference and references, credentials. These are things that your students may know these words in one context, but they don't know what they mean in another, or they just may not know exactly what it means. Maybe they've heard like reference, but they don't know exactly what a reference is or what a good reference is. All right, outlook, yes. Aptitude, very good. Application, of course. Keywords, good. Lots of great words here. All right, we're going to go on back to the PowerPoint, and I just want to talk about a few things that you should be thinking about as you teach vocabulary and as you prep your students for the other work you're going to be doing. So one of the things I recommend before you start using any of the career exploration tools that we're going to look at today is that you pre-teach some common vocabulary. And we just saw a word cloud of a lot of different words, but another word that they might not know is trait. If you have them do a personality inventory, they may not know that word. Outlook, that was on the word cloud. Experience, and what experience means, you know, as just a general word versus what experience means when you're talking about resumes or job searches. And these are just a few examples. You have a lot more examples in that word cloud that you gave us. And then you want to make sure that you are explaining some important distinctions. So for example, making sure your students know the difference between job and career. The National Career Development Association defines career as the sum total of one's life experiences, including education, paid and unpaid work, and community and volunteer and family activities. But I like the dictionary definition, which is that it's an occupation that's undertaken for a significant period of a person's life and with opportunities for progress. And that's really different than a job, which might be like, I'm taking it right now because I need a paycheck, but I don't have any desire to stay in that for a long time. And it doesn't necessarily have opportunities for progress. Some other distinctions include skills versus qualifications, because those are two different things that a job application might ask for or an interview might ask for. And then I also recommend that you, before you start doing career exploration with students, that you assign career specific vocabulary if you have students that you already know what their interests are. So for example, you may have students who they know that they want to do something within like the cosmetology or esthetician field. And so you might want to assign some vocabulary that's career specific, or you may know, you may have a student who knows they want to do something within medical, then assigning some career specific vocabulary. And I really recommend leveraging the distance learning options. So for example, my program, we used Burlington and Engine, and both of those have some great vocabulary specific to career modules that you could assign to the student. But you can also do a Google search and just find vocabulary specific to careers. And a Google search term that I would use is I would type I'm going to put it in the chat box actually. I would type ESL vocabulary career specific English for, and then I would put whatever I'm looking for construction workers, for hospitality workers. On the resources that I'm going to share with you after this webinar, I have put a link to English career vocabulary it's one link that leads to a variety of jobs. So you could assign that to students ahead of time. All right, so now we get to dive into our journey of who am I, where am I going, and how do I get there? And the first thing we're going to look at is a tool called Traitify. And I love Traitify because it is very simple and it's based on pictures. And so students don't have to have a lot of reading ability for this. They're going to look at a picture and there is like a phrase at the top. You'll see an example, and then they just click me or not me. If they think that the image is something that they like, then they click me. And if it's like, oh no, I don't like that, then not me. And that it's as simple as that. So let's take a look at a few examples of images. One is getting your hands dirty. For me, that is definitely not me. I click not me for that one. Or do it yourself. In general, I would also click not me for that one. Working in groups, that is me. So I clicked me for working in groups. So let's take a look at what the results might look like after you go through this. I think there's about 60 of these pictures that you're just clicking me or not me. And I'm going to click here and it's going to take us to the results. And this is after I have already created a login. So again, you're going to need an email address. The student will have to create a password for it. But as you can see, this is my results. And I like the way the results page is set up. So the first thing you have is a short paragraph. And there is a video that you can click on here. I'm not going to play it, the whole thing. So the video goes along with this paragraph, and it is, I am sorry, there is an emergency. I'm really sorry. I'm at a university and there's a code about an emergency going on, but it's just a test. Okay, so there's a transcript right here. This is exactly what is said in the video. So students can listen to it and read it at the same time. And you can even show them how they can do the subtitles if they want, and how they can slow down or speed up the playback speed. But it gives them a few things about their own personality. So imagine like how they could use this in interviews later if they're asked to talk about themselves. There's also career matches. So I'm going to click on this and open it in a new tab so you can see just really quickly. It gives an idea of careers that are a best fit with your personality. And there's a bit of a personality breakdown, and there's some description about this. So for me, it listed me as a visionary, and it gives me a description of what a visionary is. My next highest one is mentor, and it gives me a description of what a mentor is. And I would say that this was a pretty good fit for me. Being a visionary and a mentor is my two highest. It also gives me my top 5 personality traits. Again, imagine what you could do with this in giving your students activities where they're practicing for interviews and they have to talk about themselves and describe themselves. And then lastly, it talks about how your personality complements different work situations, where you could find conflict in work situations, and what the best work environment is for your personality. So okay, someone is asking if I can go back to the assessment slide. So the assessment looks like this. You're just doing me and not me. And it's, like I said, you're going to have about 60 pages. And then what I was showing you was the results, and these are my results after I have finished the assessment. Let's talk about a few activities that we could do with students based on this. And I've broken this up into entry level, medium difficulty, and your extra mile students who are like exceptional. You know, there may be their levels might be a little higher than the rest of your class. So add an entry level, and I have done this entry level activity with those NRS for ESL students, so beginning or lower intermediate students. At the entry level, I might have them go to a Google slide, and I'll have to teach them how to use Google Slides, but that's something I do in all my classes is teach them how to use Google Slides, and do a 3 things activity. After they've read this top part and they've watched the video and looked up unfamiliar words. Then for a medium difficulty, I might have them read their top 5 traits. And again, clarify that difficult vocabulary and do an extra Google slide. And we're going to go to the Google slide in a second and look at these. And then for a highest level student, I might also have them go back down and read that best work environment to kind of better understand what their best work environment is. And they would do all 3 Google slides. So let's go to the Google slide activity. And I have put a copy of this on the resource page that you all will get. So you could take this and adapt it for whatever would work best for your students. But I would ask the student to go to their slide, put their name, and at the beginning, entry level, lowest level students, just write 3 things they learned about themselves from the Traitify assessment. For my medium level students, I would have them do that first slide, but also I would ask them to choose 2 of their top 5 traits and write sentences about themselves. Something that tells me how that trait is true. And this, again, you're building those skills so that a student can not only talk about a trait about themselves in an interview, but give an example. So they might say, I am outgoing. That was one of the traits. When I'm in a new situation with new people, I like to talk with them and make them feel welcome. That's how I show that I'm outgoing. And then for my highest level student, I want them to do those first two slides, but they are also going to talk about what they learned about the work environment. I just finished a round of interviews for a new student worker position that I'm hiring. And one of the questions, and I didn't create the interview questions, was describe your ideal work environment. So this is like legitimate. Like if you can help your students be able to talk about their best work environment, you're equipping them for a possible future interview question. And then the last thing for those highest level students is to think about something that surprised them about the assessment. Okay, so that is Traitify, and that's just kind of looking at that question of who am I? But now let's think about the question, where am I going? And with this one, we're going to look at two different tools and use them in tandem with one another. One of them is Workforce Atlas, which is a tool by ProLiteracy, or it is connected to ProLiteracy. It's free. And then Career One Stop. Some of you may be familiar with Career One Stop. It's used in a broad variety of contexts, but both of these are free again. So let's look first at Workforce Atlas. This is a tool that you use to get to do an assessment, and there are 4 different assessments once you create an account. One is job interests, one is job skills, one is a reading assessment that's very short, and one is a math assessment. And you cannot do, for example, reading until you've done job interests and job skills. So you take these in order. Once you finish the job interest assessment, you have unlocked the job skills assessment, and so on. Let's look at a picture of the interest survey. So again, it's pretty simple in terms of very pictorial. So you are using these emojis to say what you like and dislike in order to show interests that relate to specific tasks that you might do in a career. So here is an example, and you can see a few of my answers. You can also see that there are 60 questions. So it's not a full question. There are 60 of these phrases that you need to rate from strongly dislike to strongly like. And then another task is to drag these things into things that you feel like you could do well, that you're good at. So for example, what is the one that you perform best out of these choices? It definitely for me was not use math to solve problems. I probably drugged that one into the 6th place. I can't remember exactly, but I'm going to guess that showing others how to do something is what I drug to the first spot, and then probably choose the right words to use when writing is what I drug to the 2nd spot, and so on. So again, let's look at the results. This is my page that I created from my login. And you can see here that I have completed all 4 of the assessments. And after completing all 4, it gives me some occupation recommendations. There are quite a few of these recommendations. I can choose one to be my favorite if I want to, or I can just explore several of them. So let's explore, I want to explore the recreational therapist because we're going to use that as an example for the rest of our session today. So if we click on Learn More on respiratory therapist, recreational therapist, then it's going to show me some other possible titles or related jobs like an activities director or an activity coordinator. I can even click show all, and it's going to show a lot of different potential jobs that are related. It gives me a brief description And I want you to note that because one of the activities is going to do something with this description and then the things that you would do in the job. And that's all we're going to look at for right now, but there's a lot more that information that it gives you. So this is the Workforce Atlas, and this was one of the occupations that it suggested for me based on the assessments that I completed. So let's look at what we could do, some tasks we could do with students related to this. So at the entry level, I would ask the student to look at those recommendations and then choose one and write down the name. And then I'm going to ask them to go to Career One Stop, and we'll look at that in a moment, that website. I would have them type the name of the job in the search bar and watch the video that comes up because it'll give them a video that shows a little bit more information about that job. And then, because I'm wanting them to develop some speaking skills related to talking about themselves in an interview, I would ask them to turn to their partner and tell their partner 2 things that they learned about the job. Remember, this is entry level, so I may have some students who still don't have a lot of speaking skills. So just 2 things that they learned about the job. Before we look at Career One Stop, I want us to go ahead and look at what the other activities are. Oh, and then the other thing is I would have them say, do you think you would like this job? Because they really are trying to figure out where am I going at this stage. If the student has a little bit more abilities in reading and speaking, then I might have them click on the Learn More part of 2 different occupation recommendations and read the descriptions that we looked at, and then look at which of the job duties and activities do they like more from between the 2 jobs. And I want them to write down some notes about why. Why do they like one occupation more than the other occupation? After that, they're going to go to Career One Stop, and the job that they like the best, they're going to type that in the search bar, watch the video, and then tell their partner why they chose that job instead of the other job, and 3 things that they learned about the job. And then for those higher level students, they're going to do the same thing about learn more about 2 of the recommendations. They're also going to do the same activity where they're noting down the jobs and the duties and activities and figuring out which one do they like more, making some notes. They're going to go to Career One Stop and type the name of one of the jobs in the search bar and watch the video. Then they're going to go ahead and watch the video about the other job. And then we really want our students to get to a place where they can give presentations in front of others. It's a really important job skill. So we're going to ask them to prepare a 3-minute presentation about the 2 jobs and share which job they would most likely pursue and 2 reasons why they chose that job. And I will go ahead and say, anytime I ask my students to do a presentation in class, I model it and video myself and send them the video, or I post the video in Google Classroom or whatever tool I'm using as a learning management system, because I want my students to have an example. Okay, so let's go. We've talked about Career One Stop. Let's go ahead and go to Career One Stop. When we get to Career One Stop, this is the landing page. And all you have to do to find a video about a certain career is type it in the search bar. Again, you're going to need to show your students how to navigate these dashboards as you give them these assignments. So we were looking at recreational therapist. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so when we get to recreational therapist, remember I said they should watch the video. And so they can click here and watch a video, and it's just a short video that tells them a little bit about the job. And for those higher level students, we were asking them to watch 2 videos and then choose one job that they're more likely to pursue and 2 reasons why they chose that job. And these are suggestions you might find. There's so many things actually that you could do with this little bit of information right here. Or if you have them learn more about the career or see job postings. I mean, there's a wealth of activities you could do. I'm just giving you suggestions of a few. All right, so we have looked at who am I and where am I going? And the last thing we want to look at is how do I get there? And this is the tool we're going to use for this is called ONET. So ONET has something called My Next Move. And within My Next Move, you can type in any career and you're going to get a lot of information about that career. Yes, Kate, I love ONET too. And actually prior to, it's the one prior to today that I have definitely used the most. I've used these others a little bit. I've used ONET a ton. And I wanted you to be able to leave with several resources to do exploration and build activities off of after today. So what I would have students do with ONET, and I have used this in multiple iterations of the same course, the activities we're about to look at. I would have them go to ONET and type in the name of their desired career in the search bar, and then read about the job, and then they're going to complete a Google form. And I think it's important to take a look at the Google form first. So I have created an entry-level Google form that is for students who have more basic reading skills. Like if I have a student who's an NRS 4, I would probably use this entry-level form. And then I have a different Google form that I've used with a little bit higher students. And I'm going to show you an example of my student, my higher level students, one of them's response. So I'm asking them to tell me the name of the job that they looked at, other names for that same job, 2 abilities they need for the job, and then I want them to read the personality section and list 1 word or phrase that they read that matches their personality. And again, we're prepping them for interviews, for cover letters, like giving them the vocabulary to talk about why they would be good for that job. I want them to read the technology section and look at the software that they already know how to use, but also one thing that they don't know how to use soon yet. And this has resulted in students signing up for IETs in our program that help them obtain some of the technology skills that they discovered that they needed. What is the education they need for the job, average salary, and then based on what they read, would they want that job in the future, and something new that they learned from doing this search. And we'll go back and look at the more advanced one in a moment, but first I just want us to look at ONET. So we're going to use recreational therapist again as our example. And this is what ONET looks like. I don't know, does this video right here look familiar? It's because it is the same video from Career One Stop. And you can see a word cloud of words that might describe a recreational therapist. So here's where you have those other names and you have what they do on the job. I think that's so useful for a student who's trying to visualize, are these the kinds of things I would want to be doing in my career over and over time? Knowledge, skills, and abilities that they might need. What kinds of personality traits, so that you could bring in what they learned about themselves from Traitify, and they can look to see are some of those personality traits in this career. Technology they might need, education, the job outlook. This could be bright. A bright outlook is really good. It could be average. It could be below average. This average salary, I do want to point out, is like nationwide, but you can check out the average salary for your state. And I've done that many times with students. And then I like the explore more because it gives you some other things that might be related and even industries you might want to look in. If this appeals to you, then other jobs within this industry may as well. So just in wrapping up these activities, I want to take a look at, this is one of my students' responses, and this is the not entry-level Google form. It's for like a higher level student. This student did not have a GED yet, and they were an ESL student. She was an ESL student. She wanted to be an esthetician, and so she looked at other names of the jobs and some of the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and how I asked her to talk about how that fits with her own knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then anything in the personality section that doesn't fit with their personality. And then using some words and phrases from the personality section, how would you describe yourself in an interview? The technology questions are the same as at the entry level, and this student did sign up for our Microsoft IET after doing this activity. And then the education they may need, the salary, the outlook, another job that they wanted that was listed in Explore More. And then I asked them, what is one, for the higher level students, based on what you learned today, what is one thing you will do to better prepare yourself to get a job in this field? And she said she's going to learn how to use Microsoft and also the esthetician career. All right, so that is a look at some activities you can do at the stage of how do I get there? So I want you to think about the tools we've looked at today. We had Traitify, we had Workforce Atlas, we had Career One Stop, we had ONET. Which tool are you most likely to use with your students moving forward? And you can write your answers in the chat box. Okay, and Sue Park asked, is Traitify free? Yes, every tool we looked at today is free, which is brilliant. We only want to use free tools as much as possible. All right, so a lot of people are saying they're going to use Traitify. I hope you use all of them. Yeah, Workforce Atlas, good. So as you're writing, I want to go ahead to the next page. We are going to have time for questions, and I can stay later if I need to ask questions. But I also have a question for you as I take your questions. And my question is, as you watch this today, and as you saw some of the activities, and you can write your answers in the chat box, what is one thing that I did that builds general literacy skills, not just workforce literacy, but literacy skills? And what is one thing I did that might build digital literacy skills? Because remember, I asked you to be thinking about how these activities can integrate workforce literacy, information literacy, general literacy, and digital literacy. So as you're thinking about that, I'm going to ask Danielle if there are any questions that I need to be answering.
Right now, we don't have any questions.
Okay. Yeah, the Google Forms, Google Docs, Google Slides, these are all helping build digital literacy, and definitely creating an email. And one of the things that Rebecca talked about is going over how to navigate the dashboards. I think that if you do that and you think aloud as you do it, you're also building some transferable skills of like, because many dashboards are similar. And so those skills can be transferable, like knowing, like, for example, if I go back to ONET for a second, it's a transferable skill to know that after I type something in here, if I click on this little arrow, it's going to enter my information. And so talking aloud as you do that, like, okay, students, I'm typing in my thing. Oh, look, here are some choices. I don't even have to finish spelling it. I can just click. And then if I click, it takes me right there. Just those are transferable skills that build digital literacy as well. Yeah, I agree that pictures with simple language, that is really, it's great for your low literacy students, and it's helping to build some literacy skills because you've got getting your hands dirty, and then there's pictures of dirty hands. Discussing results with partners and teaming up is a great way to develop more workforce skills.
Michelle, we do have a question now.
Sure.
Someone asked, are students able to use these with an iPhone?
Yes, that is a great question. Most of them have been created with to be mobile friendly, like with that in mind. The one I'm not as sure about is Workforce Atlas. Are you guys able to answer that question, Lauren?
Yes, I can answer that question. Yes, Workforce Atlas was built to be completely mobile friendly as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead. The link to the survey from today is in the chat box, and I'm going to go ahead and show a couple last slides. But please, if you have questions, you can keep bringing them in. And I thank you all for coming today. I will be doing 2 more webinars in the new year. You can see them there on the left. We're going to look at how to teach students resume writing, such a valuable skill. And then we'll do one on communication for the workplace, which is also a really good soft skill that our students need. And then you can see some upcoming HSC track and math track webinars that are coming very soon. The HSC track one is tomorrow. So I hope that you get signed up for that and don't miss it. And I think that was, yeah, here's the coaching sessions. So we'll be sending out a resource information page that has links from today and the major points, but also I would love to have you in the coaching sessions. And if you have tools that you really love for these kinds of exploratory activities, then come to the coaching sessions and share them with me and share them with others who are going to be there. I really want my coaching sessions to be a peer-to-peer learning. So I would love to learn additional tools, and not just tools, but activities to really extend that learning with the students. So I hope that you'll join us this Friday for the first one, or one of the ones next week.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This was really great. I want to remind people about the membership and scholarship applications as well. Those links were in the chat, and they will be in all of the follow-up materials that Danielle sends out, in addition to the follow-up sheet, the recording, and copies of the slides. I don't see any final questions coming in, so I think we can end it there for today. Thank you, Michelle. This was a great webinar with so many great resources. I know there'll be a lot of clicks happening once people get that resource page with all of the links. Final question came into the chat. Is there a charge for the coaching sessions? No, this is a grant-funded project. So all of the webinars and coaching sessions are completely free for anyone who wants to come.
Yes.
We hope to see you there. The coaching sessions are fantastic, great, lively chat and learning from each other. It's a really wonderful opportunity. So thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.